Hi, the name of this video is going to be book review, Ancient and Modern Britons, Volume 1, book review. It's this book right here by David McRitchie. It's a very good book. It's about 400 pages long. My only criticism of the book is that it probably could have been about half that length. If it were organized a little bit different. It repeated the same information, quite often, and so yeah, that's my only criticism. But still a good read. It the book is it basically goes into a lot of stuff that I've somewhat researched, right, and so. It goes into the fact, it focuses primarily on Scotland and Ireland and Wales, some, but mostly Scotland, Ireland. Doesn't really get into a lot of the history in the English or England part of Britain, right? It does a little bit, but not very deep. But it focuses on Ireland, Scotland, Wales, the so-called traditional. I won't say traditional, but the so-called areas that the so-called original, that the history of the original Britons, the people who were still what were they called, the Celts, or the Britons, the original British people, after the Roman invasion by Julius Caesar, right around, that would have been around what, 50 BC or somewhere in that time frame. So it gets deep down in there, and the book is it goes into a lot of the information was validated based off of the remains of people that they found there, the ancient people, measuring the skulls, doing DNA type analysis, doing just different analysis, and kind of segmenting and breaking down the different peoples that lived there originally, right? And it basically tells a story, that island was pretty much inhabited by dark-skinned people, right? It breaks it down. I won't go into the way he categorized it, but he touched on one group of people who appears to be maybe the same genetic type of like the Aborigines in Australia, dark skin, wavy hair, which based on at least my research, I believe those people to be basically Japhetic people from the Japhet line. And then he touched on basically there's a Negro, more the woolly, very curly hair texture, right? Which is comparable to the people of Iberia. There's that, they've had a presence there, and again, those people, there's two schools of thought: either the Egyptians, which there's some research that says that Scotland was named after an Egyptian princess named I think her name was Scotia or something like that. Now, you know, the, the thing is, anytime you're getting into some of that type information, all of that kind of also runs in with, with the Israelites and some of their history, right? So, there's definite evidence that the Israelites had a presence there. Of course, all the time periods are fuzzy, but these people were there, a long time ago. Even and can't remember where I read it. In some of Julius Caesar's writings, he talked about the Celts being a dark-skinned people with curly hair, right? All right, curly. You could say curly, but basically meaning more than likely woolly, right? We know about the Phoenicians, during the time of David and Solomon, and them having a navy, put together with by the Canaanites, right? And there's evidence that there are Israelites that basically got moved around to different lands, right? So there's evidence of the Israelites being there. There's evidence of probably Japhetic people being there. There is evidence of what appears to be Caucasian people being there. Now their time period for being there, uncertain. More than likely, based on history, more than likely they are tied to the Roman invasion. So there's evidence of all those people being there. Okay, he goes into the Huns, them being a very dark-skinned people. Uh, you know, not the people you see in the movies. He goes into the Vikings, basically them being dark-skinned people. Um, Basically the tribe of Dan, which were the original inhabitants of. Well, I don't know if they're original inhabitants, but they came down out of the northern lands where the Vikings dwelled a long time ago. You know, um, and which you never see. I mean, you see some movies where there's a black Viking here and there. There's a movie called The Long Ships with Sidney Poitier, and then there's history. There's a couple of the Vikings that he brings up in his book. What Thor? I'm trying to remember. Both of them names started with Thor, Thor. Thor. I can't remember. They're very popular Vikings, and they were known. Both of these individuals were known to be black men, but really, when you drill down on it, all the Vikings were early Vikings. Well, I won't say early Vikings. There's only one really time period of the Vikings. So the Vikings were dark men, basically Israelite men, Negro men. Okay, so you get into that, the seafaring people. All of that ties into and is a somewhat of a confirmation of again the people in the Americas, with the black presence in the Americas, Now we know from the Bible that people came over here, what, 7th century BC, but the Vikings, there's there's the Leif Erikson that came a long time ago, and then there's people from Wales that history tellers came over. Um, History that no one they want to no one will choose to confirm because it would excuse me, it would basically bring out some history that people don't want brought out. But there's history either in the 6th century AD or the 11th 12th century AD that people from Wales sailed over here. And so, and again, these would have been black men, at this point in time. So, um, you know, it 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 points into again there being a heavy majority presence of these black people early on. So one has to ask themselves, okay, well, what happened to all these people? Where did they go? What they just disappeared, right? So he talks about the mixing of the people and how it's got lighter over time, and now you got this, kind of two sets of Caucasian people over there. You've got what they call the dark Caucasians, which would be someone that has, probably, like black hair, a little, skin is, probably a little more on the tan side instead of the kind of pinkish side. They probably tan easier or better. And they got dark eyes, probably brown, dark brown or mid-tone brown. And then you've got the other Caucasians, which, would be the red or blonde hair, green or blue eyes, the more pinkish skin or lighter colored skin. And it talks to who their descendants are, who their descendants were, not descendants, their who their fathers were, fathers and mothers, right? The genes of their fathers and mothers. So, but still, in understanding in basic science that the black genes and traits are the more dominant, in order for the masses to swing in that direction that dramatically, you would have to have a very minority, black population and a majority, Caucasian population. So again, if it was majority black population back then, where did all these people go? Okay, so you got, this is, some gaps. Now, there are some explanations if you, kind of extrapolate and fill in some of the gaps. So you got the Black Plague, which wiped out the majority population there, which would have been the black people. And then you've got, throughout Europe, these civil uprisings and things, which against, the ruling class or the different populations, which, basically were, acts of genocide, right? Against the black population there. And so he goes into his book about what he called black gypsies, right? Which were basically kind of the ruling class people who really really well, I don't know if you want to call them ruling class, but they were, well, the gypsy phenomenon that he talks about was basically people of color, and based on their description, it sounds like perhaps Negro type people who basically roamed from town to town, and were kind of what appeared to be kind of nomadic people that basically were basically bullying. Sounds like bullying other people, and perhaps committing extortion and some other things from people, and basically the society kind of turning on these people. But again, a great book that talks to quite a bit of good history. Oh, one other point I wanted to bring out is there's also some history out there of some of these dark people, Negro people, basically being brought to the Americas and to the islands in slavery, right? And so that would account for another reason why this dark population dwindled. And then also again I mentioned the wars there, and the Crusades. There's people that went off to fight in the Crusades never came back, and so he mentioned some history in his book. Basically, the man going off to battle, going off to fight, dying, and then the woman that was left at home basically ending up marrying like one of her servants or something like that, the servant class person, instead of like a noble, and then that person coming in and basically taking over the wealth of that particular family. Okay. And he also mentioned same fashion, the different people, one class of people serving another class, taking on their name, and just so much mixing, name changing, and different dynamics that it'd be very hard to, with 100% accuracy, determine who the real original owners of a certain name was, who the real original nobles were, things like that. Now, one thing I wish he would have got into, in the book is, basically calling out, again, some of these British kings, right, and royals, and basically what their particular physical appearance was, right? And that I would have liked to have seen that, but of course that probably would have gotten him probably a lot more pushback on getting the book published. So that could be a reason why he didn't go deeper into it. But again, a good book, if you want to get into the history on that, on that particular subject. I've got, personal reasons for wanting to get into this subject, because, based on my history or my research, I believe my family came from Britain, and were one of these people that got basically, for whatever reason, put into slavery from Britain and brought here to the Americas. Which, you know, if you look at the history books here, you know, in the U.S., they'll claim that all the people, all the black people here uh, came from came from Africa, and that's, I mean, that's not the truth, right? So, just want to bring out one scripture. Let's see. There's a lot of scriptures that can be barred out on this, but you know, just one scripture. Psalms 85, verse 11. The truth shall spring out of the earth, and righteousness shall look down from the heavens. And so, you know, basically the truth springing out of the earth, meaning, you know, archaeology, which, I mean, again, you know, a lot of the information that David McRitchie early in the book brought out was, you know, some of the analysis that had been done on the skulls and the, you know, the genetics of the remains of, you know, the ancient remains of Britain in order to, you know, pull this, you know, analyzation of the population of old together. So, all praises to Yahweh, by Hashem Yahushai, for the opportunity to bring forth this information and, you know, recommend, again, ancient and modern Britons to the readers. Leave messages or comments, questions, as always.